So, Victor Kulchar, founder at Veles Farming, thank you so much for joining me on the Vertical Farming podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So, for the benefit of the listener, where is home for you?
My home is Slovakia, the heart of Europe, as we call it, or the cheap man Switzerland. That is where my home is from.
And did you grow up there?
Yes, grew up there, but studied abroad, studied in the Netherlands, and now I'm living back here. We have the company over here.
And for anyone that may not be familiar with what it's like to grow up there, what are some of your earliest memories growing up there, your childhood? What was that like?
Imagine like the most typical Eastern European kid life, just going to the playground with a lot of kids with a very rundown playground in like the big skyscrapers. We call them panelaki. It's like the Soviet buildings.
Yeah.
So that just imagine that.
And what were your thoughts when you were getting through school and then maybe thinking about beyond school, university? What were some of the things that were interesting you?
Well, as a kid, maybe even now, I wasn't very interested in school. School was not for me. That's why I'm
Yeah.
very happy that I found the studies that I attended as well, which were like applied sciences. So all the tasks were applied. So we had like, for example, let's say we had a marketing class, so a company with marketing issue came in, and based on how we solve the issue, that's how you get graded. Because I don't work, my mind doesn't work on books. I cannot stand behind the book. I like reading now, but for example, if I had to study for a test or something, no, no go, big no go. So I didn't really know what to do, and I kind
Yeah.
of juggled around with a lot of stuff, and then I found business as a way to express myself, and we stick with it so far.
What was it about business that was attractive to you?
I think I'm very competitive, and I
Mm,
have hemophilia. That's like bad. My blood doesn't clot well, so I cannot do sports. So I need to
okay.
get off my competitiveness in some way, and I found business a way to where I can do this.
What were some of the early experiences you had with business?
I think since because we started as student entrepreneurs, I think finding like, for example, an investor, having people to bringing it to a level where people take you seriously in a way,
Mm,
because you are fighting with people who work in business 24/7. So if you have to go to school for 5 hours a day, you are already behind. Like there is somebody who puts in those 5 hours a day in the business. So
yeah.
it's very hard in the beginning to get it running. But I think when you get the first like results in, the first traction in, then it snowballs into a bigger thing.
Do you remember any relationships you had with maybe teachers, maybe mentors, maybe people who you admired that were successful in business that were inspiring for you and gave you that push to move forward?
I will have to give a shout out here to Chris. Chris was one of the first guys who took us under his wing. He was the one who also gave us the lab in school that we could use to build our first vertical farm prototype, which was a metal box, which was 1 meter wide, 1 meter tall. That's it, with two layers, nothing else, two lights, nothing worked, just water pump that worked manually. But he gave us space and freedom to do whatever we wanted, and this is where we started. And then I really liked, we went through an incubator, Founders
Okay.
Institute, and we had a lot of good mentors. I like it from there because they give you the real view. It's not like, because sometimes when you go through people and you tell them like, I have this business, oh, this is nice, this is beautiful, great job, guys, but these guys really give you the ins and outs. They've been in the trenches for some time, and some of them exited a lot of companies, some of them were from the industry, so they already know something that you don't know, and they will give you the raw truth. And I think sometimes as an entrepreneur, this is something that you miss very much. So I very value what we gained out of all the mentors, I would say, in Founders Institute, that they give you the road through. They are not there to tell you, okay, this is nice, this is nice, this is
Yeah.
good. No, they will tell you like, no, bye bye, see you next week.
They give you the hard medicine.
Yes, yes, that's what you need sometime, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what is the entrepreneurial culture like in Slovakia?
So it's not, this is why I would like to be born somewhere else, because till 89, entrepreneurship was not allowed under the Soviet Union. So you couldn't
Oh,
own your
wow.
business. We don't have the network effect. Like here, for example, in Slovakia, you don't have that many, I would call them angel investors. There are like not that many people who already exited companies are looking to help young entrepreneurs to grow up or willing to invest money. We don't have that over here. We have some Western funds, then we have 1 or 2 hour funds, but that's it. So I think this is like the network effect of entrepreneurship is still lacking. And I think we still have like kind of a stigma over here that the way to do it is to go to school, then you find a job in a corporate, and then you retired. So, and it's a lot of people are very against entrepreneurship because they are afraid. And I think this is like the most, like the strongest belief that we have over here, which we try to break also.
Well, it's good because it seems like the way you described it, the normal path for you, the 9 to 5 job for you, it seems like you knew early on that was not going to be who your
Yes,
fit, and that was
yes,
not going to be your plan.
yes. Yes, because I did a lot of also jobs like in startups. I also work in corporates. I'm not gonna name, so I don't bash anybody in case. So I have a clean sleeve. But I just didn't like the job. Like in case or in some corporates, it was like the politics over there. You know, like you come up with an idea to do something 2 times better or 2 times faster, but just because you have somebody above you that doesn't like it, or it has to come like they have to message it was their idea, you get stuck
Yeah.
over there, or then you start. This is why I moved also into startup because I was working for one startup where I'm not gonna say the founders were not like the most clever people on planet Earth, but since I seen them where the company got, I was like, if they can do it, anybody can do it, and this is why we tried as well.
When did you start to have an interest, or were you seeing what was happening in the controlled environment agriculture space?
I think in the Netherlands, I'm very happy that I studied here there as well. I think I would call it the Mecca in Europe for vertical farming
Okay.
and indoor farming. So we went around, and in our school also they like offered. There is we I studied in Amsterdam, but there is a part of university there is in Delft, and they have vertical farm over there. So from there it was like awesome. And then we saw just YouTube videos. Me and my founder, we just watched the YouTube video on vertical farming. We were like, this is fucking cool. So let's do this, and then we went with it.
So talk a little bit about the relationship with your co-founder. You mentioned him. I met him as well at Vertiv Farm, which is where we connected.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you met him. Yeah, the tall
Yeah.
one, the
Yeah.
tall one. It's very funny because we used to hate each other in the beginning, uh, and
What's his
then
name?
we kind of grew. Miroslav,
Okay.
and then we kind of grew together. And what I really like is like we both are like nerd heads into business. So everywhere we go, the only thing we do is we talk business. Even if we go to conference, then we go to after party at 2 a.m. We go home on the bus, we talk business, nothing else. This is what I like really, that we always just think about the business and how we can grow it and what different ways we can try to do this. If we do this, what will come out of this? I talked with this guy today. He told me this nice idea, so maybe we can implement it. You know, stuff like this.
And so, as you were starting to work together, it seems like you had complementary skills, and maybe he had some skills that you didn't, and you had some skills he didn't. And it feels like there's a good combination that you both decided, because it's always a challenge when you decide to take on a co founder or work together on a business with someone. You could be friends with someone, but then business with someone that's a friend is not
That's
always the best
completely different.
result. So, what did you see, or
Exactly.
what was it about the combination of you two together that you felt was working?
I think it's because we are like complete polar opposites in personalities and also how we work. So, you know, there is always like, okay, I would imagine it this way, I would imagine it this way. Okay, now we have two things. Let's find a way. Maybe the middle way will be always nicer. So I think this is what works very, very well for us, that we are completely opposite on also how we work. So then a lot of interesting stuff sometimes come. Sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it works wonders, you know. So I think this mix of things really plays into our hands.
Can you talk a little bit and tell the story about the idea for Veles? Like, do you remember where you were when you came up with it?
So I think we were still in school. Actually,
Okay.
in before we were named Green Investment Groups,
Okay.
but then we were a lot with Miro into crypto projects, and all the cool crypto projects were named after Greek gods. So we went through like Greek gods, Roman gods, but all the good gods were already taken. So then we were like, oh wait, we are from Slovakia, like Slavic. Let's look up some Slavic gods, and that's how we found Veles is like agriculture Slavic gods. So we were like, ah, perfect, fits the company. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's a great name. So, what was the idea when you first started Veles, and how is it different than what you're currently offering now?
Oh, it's completely. We started with microgreens.
Okay.
This is what we wanted to do, like microgreens. Like let's do a lot of microgreens, and then we'll figure out what we can do out of them. Then we moved into like leafy greens, herbs, stuff like this. And then because in we moved back to Slovakia during COVID, and then the whole business model went out of the window because all the restaurants were closed down, and we were selling directly to restaurants. And also in Amsterdam or Netherlands, it works quite differently because the trends in the customers or the businesses is also somewhere further with the sustainability part, fresh ingredients. You know, here in Slovakia, price is the main factor always. And if you even present somebody a fresher option, usually in 99% the price is the deciding factor. So we were everything was closed, so we didn't know what to do. So we were like looking for crops to grow that have other added value than just being sold to. And we were going through wasabi, ginseng, but these crops are very like challenging because the roots have to grow for a certain amount of like years in order to before you can sell them. So like, can we run a business that cannot create any profit for 5 years? No, okay, let's throw this out of the window. Then we tried like vanilla, but that's very hard work-wise. And then we came across Saffron and also Dr. Ardalan. And then we tried a little test and it worked, and we found a way to make it better. And this is where we are now.
So talk about the relationship. What's his full name? Dr. Ardan?
Dr. Ardalan. I don't know. I'm afraid to pronounce his full name because I will mess it up. But we call him Dr. G,
Dr.
but
G.
Dr. Ardalan.
Yeah.
And we found him through YouTube, actually. We were studying saffron production. He has some videos on saffron production on YouTube. And then we reached out to him via LinkedIn, and he was like, you guys do vertical farming. I do indoor farming as well for saffron. You want to try saffron? We're like, yes, perfect. That's why we reached out. And he gave us a little book where there were like the basics on how to set it up, what temperatures you need, the humidity, the CO2, the light, everything, how the cycle looks like, what do you need to prepare, what do you need to buy, what to look out for, and stuff like this. So, and then we ran a little test, and we were, I have to say, pretty successful in it. So that's why we decided to stick with it, and then we found a way to introduce like multiple harvests into the system as well, so to make it even more profitable. Because we are very excited about saffron, because saffron is like the most expensive crop on, or not crop, spice, I'll say. And for us, vertical farming, especially in the beginning, it's quite like cash consuming, that you need to invest a lot in front, and it takes also kind of a lot of energy, like electricity wise. So we needed something to basically be able to pay over the investment to development that we had. So this is why saffron also fit the case for us, and this is why we stick with it so far.
I mean, it sounds like that meeting with Dr. G was very important when you started listing all the things that little magical book
Yes.
provided you.
Yes.
It's almost like the secret recipe for success in
Yes,
saffron production,
yes.
and because there's so many variables. Obviously, with all the hundreds of interviews we've had on the show, and everyone, growing a wide variety of crops, there's obviously specific needs and considerations when it comes to saffron. I would imagine it's somewhat of a delicate crop as well. And just to have a head start, to understand someone who's been there before and also willing to share with you, that's really says a lot about his character.
Exactly.
That he wasn't feeling like, oh, this is super secret or super private. And there must have been something that he saw in you both that made him want to work with you.
I fully agree. I don't know. I think this guy never sleeps. Like if I message him 2 a.m., 10 a.m., p.m., whatever, he always responds like in 5 minutes, and he's always ready. Like, okay, I'll explain on the call. Let's go. Because I don't have an agriculture background. So how we learned, especially at the university, we were lucky. Chris, what I told you in the beginning,
Yeah.
the lab was in at agriculture university, and it was like an innovation center.
Yeah.
So there were also teachers who studied vertical farming or indoor farming or horticulture or all stuff around. So in the beginning, we just went to all the teachers. We bugged them every day, all day. I was like, I need answers on this. How much light do I need? I don't understand this.
Yeah.
How do I mix the nutrients correctly? How do I then analyze the water that comes out? How do I do this? How do I do that? How to adjust the airflow? And they were like, okay, guys, just leave me alone for, but we're like, no, 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 I need this information. And so this is how we started, because I really didn't know how to grow anything. And we just asking questions to people who work with it. And this is why I like Dr. Ardalan as well, that he always gives the answer, and he's always willing to share information as well. I'm very happy for it.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the training for you and a lot of the learning is really like learning by doing and just learning by asking questions.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and
Yes.
it seems like how you've gotten made a lot of progress, because a lot of people just wait, or they feel like they have to find someone that can do it for them. But there's nothing like learning firsthand yourself what you need to do, because that's when you really have the hands-on experience.
Exactly. I think for a person, or let's say entrepreneur, he has to understand what he's going to do. Like you cannot have somebody who never did it before to explain the process to somebody who also never did it before,
Yeah.
so then it won't work. And for me as well, like when I explained with the school, like for me, I have to learn by doing. This is the only way. It's how my mind works. Somebody might be different,
Yeah.
for somebody books works perfectly. Okay. I don't judge on that. But for me, it's like trial and error. Okay, let's do this. Okay, let's analyze the mistakes, what we can do better, and then do it again, do it again. This is why I was happy with the microgreens in the beginning, because microgreens has like a weekly cycle. So you can go through a lot of cycles in a very fast time. But with saffron, for example, now we basically run 2 harvests per year, but we are extending to 4, but still it's only 2 harvests per year. So the amount of harvests are minimized compared to what you can do in microgreens, leafy greens, and all the other stuff.
So when I was chatting with you both at Vertifarm, it was interesting because you were educating me a little bit about saffron and what people's think about saffron. And I explained to you that when I was in Dubai last year, I got to go to the souks and the markets, and you see the saffron piled super high, and you just wonder, wow, is it the real saffron? Is that the fake saffron? And but maybe because in Dubai they also have next to the saffron like a gold breastplate is probably worth $250,000 or something like that. So it must be like high end market or something, but you get good prices there. So how much of this has been for you in terms of an education about the spice itself, the saffron, and then educating people about, you mentioned also this idea of fake saffron that not many people know about. So a lot of this has been a learning process for you as well, I imagine.
Exactly, like to understand how the market works also, it's very important because, for example, for us, the market works completely different than, for example, as in Dubai, in Europe, let's say. Because here in the EU, most of the saffron is imported, like also to Dubai, but it's closer to India or Iran where it's mainly grown. Because the further it gets, it's always gets from the farmer to like a trader, which he sells. So there is always upcharge, 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 upcharge till it gets to the final customer. Also, then with the fake saffron, like there are a lot of frauds because it's the most expensive spice. So there's a lot of frauds going on with the saffron. So for example, don't buy powdered saffron because then you cannot tell the purity, or powdered saffron that is mixed together with other spices because then you really don't know what you are buying. Or if you're buying saffron, then make sure you're buying the threads. Make sure they are purely red. Make sure they are like a certain size. Make sure they have the right color, the right aroma, smell. So this is, I know in some cases you cannot check before when you buy from the internet, but it's also nice to know when. So, for example, this is also one of our advantages because in Europe you can mostly buy saffron from traders from outside Europe, but we are a farm. So you're buying straight from farm, and I can directly show you like, okay, your saffron comes from this tray and it's been here for this day. And in some cases, we can even pinpoint the flowers. Like this is the saffron, this flower. I can show you right away. So this way we can make it real. So it's also like important to, as you said, like educate the people on what are the differences because you don't want to pay a high price for something that's low quality if you cannot tell the low quality. So this is what we also trying to do, and understanding how the whole market works as well. Then, for example, this year there's been a 70% to 50% reduction in the overall supply because this year has been too warm. There's been too many rains in Iran. Like 90% of the production or 85% production comes from Iran, and this year was the worst over there in the last 10 years. So there is really low amount of saffron. So for example, what now the traders do as well, they withhold the saffron supply to Europe because the price are skyrocketing like it moved 100% in a week. So they are not willing to sell the saffron because they think the price will go still higher. So they are withholding. So this plays to the price as well. So you have to understand like how the whole market operates in a way to price it correctly, and also to show, for example, something we are trying to do is to present it or not present it. We grow a high quality product. So this is something that we are trying to reflect as well. Like for you to know that the product that you get from us, it's high quality. And there is also like, we are happy to show you the process, how it was grown, why it's high quality. What is the difference between the indoor grown saffron to the outdoor grown saffron? Where are the benefits to it and stuff like this? So this is what we try to reflect with the brand as well.
Yeah, and so how much of that is an education process? Because you mentioned typically high-end restaurants, they deal with a trader, right? Or they deal with someone, or an importer, right? For someone who they have a trusted relationship with. So I imagine for you, some of the challenge in the beginning is building those relationships in the beginning. Because if you're new to market and people have never heard of Veles, like they wonder who you are you going to be here still tomorrow? Can I depend on you providing a consistent crop? And
Yes.
so I imagine that's been some of the conversations you've been having with your partners early on.
Yes, what we try to do is especially like, so we work in three industries. So gastronomy, so food, cosmetics, and pharma. So what they are looking for also, it's completely different. So for example, we started with the gastronomy or the food part because that's like a low-hanging fruit. It's not that difficult as in pharma, because in pharma you need to be certified on production, processing. The product has to be certified as well. So you have to get, and this cannot be done in 1 week. It first of all costs a lot of money, and it takes a lot of time. And so, for example, it's easier to get into food. And then, for example, in the food, you have to also explain to the chef. Like here in Slovakia, also the chefs are completely different than in the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, they had an idea because, for example, Netherlands is more connected with Morocco, and some saffron is grown in Morocco, so they have an idea on what's good. But for example, we came into one restaurant, And the chef, we were speaking to the chef on accident through a friend, and he was like, I have the best saffron, and it came in like a paper packaging. So this is already a red flag because it's not been packaged properly. And then he was like, I bought the best saffron, it's called like the pushal or super negin, that's only the red part, but then he unravels it and it's also with the yellow part and the white part. The white part is bad because that's the plant part, it's only basically water. So so this is something that you have to tell him, like, okay, like you bought this now for this price, but and then also when it comes to explaining them. So for example, our saffron is more aromatic and it's able to color more. So even though like it in the beginning it costs a bit more, I would say you can cook, let's say, twice or three times the amount of dishes from it because it has like it's more potent, it's more aromatic, it's better coloring. So so this is something that you need to also explain to some of them. But what I notice also like around the world, like it works completely different because they're all educated on different levels. So you have to kind of pinpoint on where they stand and then move from that. So is it we move it from the basics up, or do they already have some kind of knowledge? Because for example, in a few restaurants that we work with already, like from farmers with Iran directly, but still the saffron somehow doesn't come in a very good quality. So this is, you have to understand there are also the pain points, like what they struggle with. And for example, because a few problems that you also said, like the consistency in quality. So I'm getting saffron from a farmer from Iran, but every time I buy, the color and the aroma is different. So then my recipe is different in the end, and then I cannot build what I would like to build. So this is something that we can also deliver for them.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a lot of education. And obviously, as much as they would like to trust that they have a reliable source if they're coming or sourcing anything directly from Iran, for example, you're at the mercy of the shipment. And do you know what's happening during the course of the shipment? Do you know what's happening? You don't know what's happening on the farm because you can't be there and you can't be on site. And I think what you're doing in terms of providing that visibility, and you're doing it now with the gastronomy, is very helpful because now, I just saw on your roadmap that you're getting the ISO 3632 certification as well. And obviously
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
something that's needed because as you start to enter into cosmetics, into pharma, they need that level of sophistication when it comes to being able to get a consistent quality and source and color and flavor and taste, whatever it is that they're looking for. So it's interesting
Yes.
that you already see that as a vision to be available for those markets when they're ready.
I agree. Like for us, pharma, it would be the ideal industry that we want to go into because I think this is where most of the benefit of the indoor saffron farm will shine through because we are able to control all the inputs into the flower, so that we are able to increase the like there are three chemicals: crocin, pyrocrocin, and safranal, which are also important for the pharma, and we are able to get them over the threshold that they need basically for them to consider, because there is a lot of research now with saffron that is able to, for example, help with stress relief or better sleep, or in some cases they use it in, I think it's called dementia. I don't know now. I don't know the English word, but it's used in a lot of, or it's used as a biostimulant or bioactivator. I think that is the word in some cases. So they are finding a lot of cool ways that it can be used, or they are putting it into supplements. And this is something that I think our saffron can shine the most.
How much of this has been an education process for you? Because you've able to speak eloquently about all the benefits for a chef in gastronomy and understanding like consistency when it comes to flavor and presentation, because that's really big for them, right? They want to, I'm sure some of these high-end restaurants, they have to have a consistent product every time. And then you have to
Yes.
shift your mind to how does someone who's in pharma think about the benefits? They want something different, maybe not the visual presentation, but like the actual chemical composition of this. And then you think, and then you switch to cosmetics, they may be more interested in consistency with the color or other things. And you've had to educate yourself on each of these different lines and be able to speak their language in a way that they can see the benefits of working with you.
Exactly, this like you just pinpointed exactly. Like you have to understand what the buyer is looking for. So like in the food, it's more of the physical properties of the saffron, as you said, and then in the cosmetics and pharma, it's more of the chemical properties. So you have to basically understand what the buyer wants, and this is something that you cannot learn on the first try. And you just go with, you ask a lot of people around, and also I speak with a lot of people in the industry, quality control managers, suppliers, or even farmers here in Europe, outside of Europe, in India, Iran. even Kazakhstan, then Morocco, Spain, Greece, Italy. So, I try to speak with all of them, and I'm happy that a lot of them are willing to share their experiences and their knowledge as well. And we kind of do like, I give you this, I give you this. And then you are able to learn through also their experiences. Like, okay, now I work with this customer. I know I want to move into this industry. This is what they are looking for. So, okay, I can just copy this, and then I will see how it works, and then move iterate basically on our terms.
Yeah, it sounds obviously in terms of culture, and Iran is considered by many the birthplace of civilization as well. So talk about
Yeah,
history.
yeah.
You talk about thousands and
Mm.
thousands of years. There's a lot of cultural history and cultural relevance in that part of the world, and experience in working with a spice like this. It was probably one of the many
Yes.
spices traded on the spice roads. And you think back, like everything, the spice trail. There's a lot of history going back there. So it's interesting to see how you can have conversations with people who have maybe, family going back, maybe multiple generations who grew saffron or something, to pull some of that cultural experience and history into what you're doing and have an understanding, because these people they have been doing this for a while, and they have
Yes.
a lot to teach, I'm sure, if you ask the right questions.
I have a farmer friend from Iran, and they have like a 10 generation farm already, which is
Wow.
like nuts. Like 10
Wow.
generations of people focusing on one thing. But as you said, like it's a very, I'll call it like an Asian spice, because, for example, Cleopatra used to swim in like milk and saffron baths, or they say like she used to have a saffron bed. So it
Yeah.
goes way, way, way
Yeah.
over our time, like way back. So it's very nice to also see like the history behind it, and also I think this is something that has to be translated in the message. Like, okay, this is where it comes from, but now we put like a new innovative spin on it. So now this is why we do it in this way. So this is not like we want to take it away from them. We just want to put our twist on it and try to do it ourselves.
So, talk a little bit about the experience you've had as leading this company, with you as the COO and Miroslav as the CEO. These are, I would imagine, first
Mhm.
time positions for you, and to be growing not only as an
Yes.
entrepreneur, but also as a leader, because now you're building a team. I see you've got some employees, you've been working with advisors now. So, what's that experience been for you, like personally, in terms of your development?
It's a lot of up and downs. I'll say, this is what something I like about entrepreneurship, because one day you can feel like you know everything in the world, and the second day you're like, it's not working at all. I'm so stupid, blah blah blah. So, but it's a lot of like learning. I'm very happy that we are able to build like the culture, the setup in the company, the vision for the company, how we would like to imagine it. And there is like, no, okay, we of course discuss with more people, like, okay, is this something that makes sense? What do you say with this idea? But I'm very happy. And it's like also what you said, like in the leadership role right now, we have employees under us that I want to also reflect on, like how I would, for them to understand how I imagine the company to run, how to structure the relationships. Also, like the first time hiring somebody, first time firing somebody, first time going into like an investor meeting. It's all a learning curve that you have to go, and you also have to understand like the languages of each domain that you go into. So if you are speaking with an investor, this like a completely different language, the cap table, blah blah blah. This all that the normal person doesn't go through. This is bridge round, pre-seed round, like
Yeah, yeah.
now all this, and then you go into like the more business side, and you were learning sales. Like the first time we went to a restaurant, I didn't know what a sales pitch is. So build this up from a ground up to make it work. Or then marketing, like how does marketing work? Do I need push marketing? Do I need pull marketing? What do I focus on? Then for me, I run the operations. So, okay, do I have for the saffron harvest, do I have enough staff? Is the process set up in a way that it works? Am I missing? Are there some flaws? Now, another one, this is like, is the vertical farm running correctly? Is there, for example, temperature differences between the toppest floor and the lowest floor? If yes, how can I
Mm.
fix it? So taking juggling all these balls. But this is what I like, that every day it's something new, every day it's something challenging, and every day is a new challenge that you tackle head on. And every day you spin the roulette, you have 24 hours. So how you spend the 24 hours, then it will, small incremental steps will lead to, even Rome wasn't built in a day. So you cannot expect to build a unicorn in one day, two
Yeah.
day, a week. So it takes time, and you have to also understand the business you are in. So for example, a vertical farm is run away completely differently than a software company or a crypto company
Yeah.
or a social media agency. So getting to understand all this, it's a whole learning curve that you have to go through. But this is what I like about business. So this is why it's fun for me.
How have your relationships with your advisors helped you cover some of that ground and learn some of these new things that weren't natural for you at first?
So I think I'm very happy because we got more of like, I'm not gonna call them older guys because they are not old, but they already been through something. So they have the
Yeah,
experience of something that we missed as
yeah,
young first-time entrepreneurs coming out of school and well, still finishing school. But this is something that I very value. I also like to speak to a lot of people who already, to identify the person who already been through the route. It doesn't have to be like they've been through route like now in half a year, but they already went through the route because if they already did it and they succeeded in it, they have a formula in mind that's going to work. So then, okay, I'll ask them about the formula and to understand, and also finding the correct advisors because this is also something I think you have to align with in the company because if you get advisors that think too much into the different side, then there is too many, you are trying to focus on too many things, get them aligned in one vision and get those advisors that would benefit the company, you the most. So identifying the people that went through the stuff or are able to help you in a way in the industry or the domain that you are operating in and or have connections in. So for example, before we had advisors just for connections in some cases, in a way that we worked with them in a way that was very nice as well, but they were more useful in connecting with us with people from the industry, which was very nice as well. And then you get new people in, and you also have to understand like when you grow up of the advisor to take on the new advisor, because this is like with the C-level management or a CEO even, like okay, now we will try to do it our most, but I think then there comes a time for everybody where you have to step down and give it to somebody who knows how to run it. Like there is a,
yeah.
as they like sometimes say, there is a CEO who founds the company, then takes it from 0 to a million, from million to 10 million, from 10 million to 100 million. So you have to understand also like your limitations, your weaknesses, where you are good at as a person, and then try to juggle and find the way to do it. So this is something we try to do with the company, to find the right people for the right time that will can basically help us to make the next steps. And then basically you go step by step by step and you arrive into the destination where you wanted to go.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, you have a really clean and really nice looking website. And I think what's also important is that you have a roadmap, which shows that you have a vision. You've talked a little bit about your pre-seed round, the pilot plant, the certification that you're working on. But even this plan, you have it listed as Q2, Q3, 2024, that you have a plan to get into these markets, cosmetics markets, the pharma markets. And then you even have a plan, even going into 2025, for automation through AI and robotics as well. So it's interesting that you have this forward looking vision of the future. And maybe can you speak a little bit to that? Like, why do you think it's important to have that roadmap in place for you as a team?
For us, it works like the carrot on the stick, I think. There is something that you need to chase or something that you need to basically work towards.
Yeah.
And we always try to look like, okay, let's also discuss the short term and the long term goals. But the long term vision is like, okay, where would be or where would we like to see the company in the future? It's like, okay, now we'll go through this stage of the company, but where do we want to develop it then further? Because then you also need, like when it comes to strategy, you need to plan it out in a way so it makes sense. And now so you scout out basically, and we see that, for example, for vertical farming, like AI and robotics will be also like the future as it's getting cheaper, more available, more easy to make as well. So we see that it can help a lot because, for example, saffron is a very labor intensive crop. So if we can automatize the process now, for example, the peeling process, like a lot of people are focusing now on the harvesting, but the main thing or where the main pain point is, it's in the peeling process. So this is
Mm.
something that you learn to understand, and you okay, if we can do this, this is like changing into the whole industry. Like nobody has ever been able to do this. So this is something that we aim for the moon, and worst case you will hit the stars. So so we really like to also not look into the short term, but the long term, and like create something that makes sense and the company can grow towards. Because then also like the hiring process, you can adjust towards it. And then also like, for example, when you raise another round of financing, then okay, if it's only a vertical farm, it's completely different when you have technology involved, because then you can somehow fuse into like a technology company. This is like also the evolvement of the company. Like for example, a lot of vertical farms in the beginning were a vertical farm, and then they moved into like a technical company, and then they moved into like a maintenance company
Hmm.
because they are running so many vertical farms around the world that they have to know how to maintain it. So you have to understand the evolution and the way you want to take the company further. And for example, you would like to also introduce new crops, have farms all over the world, because the goal or the vision for us is to grow crops where it was not possible before. or at least if it's not possible, then do it better and localize in a better way. So make it more efficient. This is all because I think the food crisis will also like understanding the trends that are ongoing in the world as well, like the food crisis, the water crisis, a lot of people, urban areas, stuff like this. So this will play into your hand as well. And if you can adjust your business, that will basically like the trends are like a wave and you are a surfboard, and so they will move you into like the direction as well. So this is something that we try to understand as well, and then base the company and the vision and the future for it in a way.
So can you talk a little bit about, you have the roadmap of what you're trying to get done over the next couple of years. And so what has it been like for you now in terms of like the clients that you serve now or the partners that you work with? Can you talk a little bit about who you're serving now and who you're working with on a day-to-day basis?
So now we mainly work with food, gastro. So a lot of restaurants, and now, as we said, like discussed, we are getting the ISO. So now we are getting the first ISO.
Yeah.
They're actually coming in a week. Then we send it out the Saffron
Okay.
to get tested. So we are waiting for the lab results. So this and working with like, I'm not gonna call it like domains and industries, but to make it further in a way that we unlock the next step for us. So as
Yeah.
discussed, like pharmaceuticals and cosmetics. So for this, we need to get certified on the production level and the processing level. So now we'll have the production level certified. Okay, we need to work on the process level certification. So for this, okay, do I need a lab? Do I need a specific space? Okay, like what are the work requirements? Because for example, now when we had the big harvest, we had a lot of people at the farm. And then, for
Yeah.
example, what we found out in like when they're working with delicate stuff, everybody needs an office chair, everybody needs a tiltable table,
Yeah.
so this is stuff that you are not gonna know until they come and audit you, see the process, like, okay, now we did the drying in another company, but now we want to do the drying at ours. Okay, now what do we need to buy? Then is it certified, or is it the certification relying, like, does it make sense for us to buy? Do we need this machine, this machine? So you are working with a lot of stuff in one place and you are trying to see the best way to move. But I think, again, I'll go back to that. We discuss or we bounce ideas with people like also in the industry, also in the certification level, also in the market level, to see like, okay, if you will see that, for example, for us to get the second level of certification on the processing part will take us, let's say, a year, half a year, because then, for example, with the pharmaceutical companies, they send an audit as well. Like, it's not enough to get only ISO certified, but they will send their own audit as well. And what can we do to prepare? Like, for example, we work with AWF, so can we get some certification? Like, there is a sustainable indoor farm certification, if that helps us. Or can we, for example, now in the EU, they don't allow us to market as organic because it's not growing in soil, so can we do something about this? Because this will help as well with, for example, the food market. So,
Yeah.
so juggling a lot of these things around and see where you can make the most progress in the short time, but still aligning it with the long-term vision is where I think the most part are.
Yeah, and it definitely sounds like you've been giving this a lot of thought and you've been thinking about the future steps, because even for something like a certification, it takes 6 months, takes a year. You still have to keep the lights on, you still have to keep business going, but also
Yes,
plan for the
exactly.
future. So it sounds like you have to have like your short-term goals, long-term goals, and make sure that everything's still aligned. So
Yes.
one of the questions I like to ask is, what is a tough question you have had to ask yourself recently?
Tough question. Am I the right person to do this job? It's like, because sometimes I think ego gets in a way to somebody,
Yeah.
and if you like, okay, if you have like a lot of successful day in a way, it can get somehow over your head, and then being able to understand like, okay, where your weaknesses are. If a person can do it better, even though it's not the way that you would imagine it, step back and take a breather. Like, okay, is this the right move to make? And it's like chess. I think understanding the chess game. So there
Yeah.
is a lot of different moves, and sometimes you don't have the good move, but you still have to make the best move possible. So I
Sure.
think this is like now we've been challenged as well. So when we started, we moved into Saffron, so these are the areas I think like this would be the hardest question, because then you need to find somebody new for the job as well. That
Yeah.
takes time. Do I have the time? Basically, stuff like this. So understanding stuff like this, like what is the most needed now as well, but still keeping in mind like where I want to go in the future.
And also keeping, maybe for yourself as a leader, educating yourself on how to be a better leader, how to be a better manager. Those are things you need to do in addition to
Yes.
the business. You need to always be looking at ways you can grow professionally and personally as well.
Yes, I fully agree. Like for me, it's like I would not my employees, or I don't like to call employees, they are like partners. We work together, you know, we are all
Yeah.
on the same level. For me, we are on the same, even
Yes.
if I'm chief, whatever, I'm from cleaner to the director, I'm everything, you know, so I'm on the same level with
Yeah.
everybody. This is how I like to work because I think then the process is works much faster. And there's like, if I do something or if I have to train somebody in something, I don't expect them to do something that I wouldn't do. You know,
Yeah.
so this is something to also that I like to do, but also then speaking with people who are in leadership roles on certain challenges that you have as a leader, like setting up the culture, how to motivate people correctly, how to show them that they can progress in the company, that they not only come into the company like, okay, you will do this, but show them that there is a future in the company. Like if we can grow, we grow together. Like it's
Yeah.
not only me who learns, it's also you who learns. And if you are a good team, then we can take it a long way.
Yeah, that's a great attitude. And I think it's helpful when people who are coming into a new industry feel like they're supported by management and that you see it like everyone rises together. And I think that's positive steps to make sure you're building a culture that's going to grow because if you show them the vision too, right, they can see what the roadmap is, they can see what the plan is. And, you know, maybe they're coming into
Exactly.
some of them may be coming into this industry for the first time into vertical farming, right, from other jobs. And they're taking a chance with you as well. So I think when you can clearly articulate the vision as a leader, I think it really inspires your team.
Yeah, I think communication is the most important part in this. Like, I think keeping a clear and honest communication with everybody. Like, I always like to hear ideas of people who are maybe not even knowledgeable in those areas because you never know, they might think outside the box and
Yeah.
might come up with something that's like completely like, because now, for example, we work in operations. And so, for example, me and David is our farm manager and we work on the farm processes, you know, so we are stuck in our line of work. But then maybe we had a sales guy who is from the Netherlands, and he came to the farm to visit over the harvest and well, and he just randomly brainstormed a very nice idea to improve the process. So these are the random findings that you wouldn't be able to do in a way. And also, I don't like when they are not able to express themselves. Like if something
Mm.
is not working, tell me right away because
Yeah.
the longer we keep it under the lid, the worse it gets, you know. So this is what something that we try to represent also, like open communication. Okay, let's go, we grow together, we move
Yeah.
together, you know, we work as one team, we don't leave anybody behind, and then we go to war together.
That's a great mindset mentality. So it'd be hard to have a conversation about vertical farming without talking about the elephant in the room, capex, electricity costs, and this is something that's top of mind, and it's things that has caused other farms to fail. And so I'm wondering how you think
Mm-hmm.
about this in terms of growth, how you think about managing all these different expenses that are really important, and it's something you don't have to deal with in open ag, but it's really like you can't start a farm nowadays without putting a lot of thought into your capex. So I'm wondering how you think about those challenges on a day-to-day basis.
I think for vertical farm, your most important thing is to understand the numbers.
Yeah.
How much the like okay for electricity, sometimes you can get solar, sometimes you there are options that you can bring this down, but understanding really the numbers and the devil is in the details mostly.
Yeah.
And for also most of the vertical farms, like okay now if for example also to bring understand if something happens into the market, which also for example reduces the price in the crop that I'm growing, or how then it will affect my overall profitability. Will I be still profitable? Because a lot of farms are not profitable in like some farms are not profitable in like 4 years, 5 years.
Yeah.
They need longer times to get profitability. So you really have to get this down and understand what do I need to do in order to basically come up at the plus in the end. And is it like electricity, like what's set up to use as well? Because now I think in the industry there are a lot of options that are like I'm not gonna call them like overpriced, but you can still get the same result with something that is way cheaper. Like you don't have to get like the most high tech
Yeah.
farm right away. You know, so, like start simply, start slowly. Like get some like I'm not gonna call like a prototype. You don't have to develop your own thing, like your own farm and to connect it to understand everything. But you know, you don't need AI, you don't need robotics right away, you don't need full process automatization right away. You know, so this is something that, for example, I view as well, like understand where I can start and then where I can build upon when still taking into consideration like my cost, like understanding also how many people it takes to run a farm. So for example, this is one challenge that we had now during the saffron harvest, because we were planning to having like the 10 to 20 people would be the most. But then in the big harvest, we needed 50 people a day, So now where do I get this? Like, does it still fit the budget, So being prepared for the also like the unexpected, and then just improving step by step on understanding how everything works together. And then, okay, like if I'm in trouble, if I switch off the light for, let's say, an hour earlier, how does this affect the quality of the crop or the result? And, or, okay, if I have to do this, then what is the result on it? Or do I need one person to run the farm? Do I need 5 people to run the farm? Do I need the biggest ECU? Am I okay with running with fans, or do I need sensors in all the trays, or is it like spread out works with well, what lights to use, So this is all that you have to take into consideration. And I'll go back again, like your numbers. If the numbers don't make sense, then there is nowhere to go.
Sounds like there's a lot of moving parts that you're keeping on top of, and that's your responsibility. So I'm sure there's always something to think about and always something to tweak, a knob to turn, a sensor to watch,
Yes.
and there's so many moving parts.
Yes,
but
exactly.
it must be exciting you're learning on the job as well, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yes, a
Yeah.
lot. Every day is a new page in the book.
So how have the experiences at the conferences been? I know we met at Veles Farm. Have you been going to conferences on a regular basis? And do you find those experiences valuable?
We've been to a lot actually, not
Yeah.
only in Europe. We went to, for example, I was on like a startup boot camp in Taiwan,
Okay.
where it ended in the conference. We went to Warsaw, to Paris, to Dortmund, but in Slovakia as well. We try to go because there's like I say like your space to meet new people that you wouldn't be able to meet before, companies that you wouldn't. For example, this usually we went to like business conferences, then we went to some ingredients conferences because this is where our buyers and, let's say, customers are as well, like in the ingredients one.
Yeah.
But then also I like Verti Farm because it's like, okay, now I get to see the part of the indoor farming part, or this part of the world as well, where you meet a lot of people with companies that have different solutions that might also help you in a way. So is there a way to partner up? Is there a way that I can collaborate with them in a way to improve also their company, but also my company? That where sometimes there is like the crosses where something from like we grow completely different crops, but in the end, like, okay, we will have the solution for each
Yeah.
other. But I think it's like important to go and to present yourself in a way, always come, I'm not going to say like prepare, but clearly communicate your idea, being
Yeah.
able to describe, meet the people. We always try to, every time before we go, we run up the map, we mark up the companies that we want to visit. We
Yeah.
do, worst case, we do a little research, and then sometimes you will even see the person. So you know directly who the person is, where is it, and you can then basically adjust the questions to them. So to
Yeah.
understand, like, okay, am I speaking with the CEO now? Then I can ask him more in-depth questions on more things. But if I'm running only with the guy who is a sales agent, then okay, he will be only able from the product side. So then speaking to people, making like present also is something what I like at conferences, because there are a lot of people that you would not meet otherwise. And you would
Yeah.
have not, maybe you would meet them online. So this is where you can present your company, get fresh ideas.
Yeah, and it's how we met, and thanks to Tia at the
Yes,
Vertical
yes.
Farming.
Shout
She
out, Tia.
connected us, and shout out to Tia.
Yes, yes.
She connected us, so it's really nice to. And that's the only time you sometimes get those experiences. I mean, I wouldn't have met you guys, or would even known of you if I hadn't traveled
Exactly.
across the world
Exactly.
to Germany.
Yeah.
So I'm always. I think it's important for me as also to tell the story of what's happening in the EU as well with vertical farming, because we have a lot of countries in North America and South America, but then there's a lot of exciting things happening on the EU side. So I think it's important to try to make it to at least one international conference on that side, at least once a year, to hear what's happening firsthand from people. So I really want to thank you for coming on. I'm glad we got connected. I was really excited to tell your story about a crop or a spice that we haven't covered on this show before, saffron, which is, I would call it a very sexy and very intriguing spice to work with. So it's fun to hear like the background about it. So if you think about it, Victor, like if I had to ask you a very simple question about what gets you out of bed every morning, how would you answer that?
I think it's the discipline. That gets me out of all day the morning. I think that's the most important part, because there are going to be days when you're not going to feel like doing anything. And it's those days when you do the little amount that will count in the end. So I think for me, it's like, I love my job. I like business a lot. I love what I do. And just wakes me up in the morning. Like for I don't know how many months now I wake up without a luck rock. Like I do in the morning. I'm ready. Let's go. New day. New challenges. I'm looking forward to what's gonna happen today.
Yeah.
So do we hit the jackpot or do we lose everything? So
Yeah.
every day is a new day, and I think that it's like the discipline and the continuity that count the most for success
Mm.
entrepreneurs. So this is something that I would like to stick with. So this is something that gets me up in the
Yeah.
morning. I'm having fun. I'm having a blast. I can meet people like you as well. So it's awesome.
If the saffron doesn't work out, you could bottle your energy and then maybe sell that, because I think a lot of people would love to have your energy and your enthusiasm. So I've been leaving a few minutes at the end of these conversations for any messages that you have for your colleagues in the vertical farming space. When you think about your peers, your fellow founders, people who are running vertical farming companies or people who are in the industry, you've met a lot of these folks at these conferences. Is there anything that you have specifically that comes to mind in terms of like a message you'd want to say to them?
I think the message would revolve around like now recently we heard a lot of farms are closing down because of
Yeah.
also like the electricity prices or where they misjudge the technology or the product or they haven't been able to achieve profitably or it didn't
Mm-hmm.
work out. So I think, but I would encourage everybody to just keep going the most that they can. So to fight the longest, I think this is something, the message I would at least like to get across the industry because I think we are making, in the end, we are making the world a better place. We can produce crops in a more efficient way, more healthy way for the people, which is also more sustainable for the planet. So it's better overall. And I think if everybody who works in the industry has like this idea in the mind that they are trying to improve the well-being of human beings, then I think it's very nice. And I'm looking very forward where we can take it. Like even though vertical farming it's been around for a few, but it's not been around for a few. There's still a lot of ways to move it, accelerate it forward. So I'm very excited of what's coming in the next 10 years, let's say, for vertical farming, where a lot of us, including other companies that I follow, that I don't know yet, that what they will found, like the next breakthroughs, let's say cereals, and stuff like this. So this will be very cool to look up into the future. So I encourage everybody to not to give up and just keep moving forward, step by step, day by day.
Very inspiring words of wisdom. Thank you so much. And I appreciate you coming on. Again, I'm glad we were able to get connected. I'm really glad to be able to tell your story. So Veles Farming is the website, velesfarming.com. Anywhere else you want to send folks to connect with you or learn more? That's the best place?
LinkedIn, I think that is the best place. And then worst case, Instagram, but I prefer LinkedIn more on the professional side.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll make sure we have that link in the show notes as well. Thanks again for your time. I really appreciate you sharing your story with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.